Hey guys, me here. Just want to give you a quick review of a movie I saw while I was at Comic-Con. I literally just got back like a couple hours ago, so I'm pretty wiped out by the time I'm recording this. I do have my Goose plushie here though. This is something I didn't get to share in the unboxing video that I'm probably going to upload shortly thereafter this one. Yeah, just before I get into the actual review, what I'm doing here, just a quick update of what the Comic-Con video is going to look like this year. I do have a bunch of footage. I'm probably going to look through it tomorrow or just over the course of this week and decide what's worth sharing, what's not sharing. I did get a couple of panels. The Adventure Time panel in particular, I did get a lot of footage from, so I'm definitely going to put that up there. And probably some stuff on the floor and some other experiences around the area. Probably post that if you guys are interested. But I know the big one that I know was really popular last year and hopefully be popular this year is the review of the DC animated movie that always premieres at Comic-Con. It's kind of been a tradition of mine to go see whatever DC anime movie is playing at Comic-Con at the time. I probably, it's a lot of noise. It's hot as hell. So there's a fan going on next to me and there's a gardener outside the window there. But anyway, I'm stalling. So I want to talk today about the newly released, well, not officially released, but the premiered DC movie, Death of Superman Part 1, which is exactly what it sounds like. They're trying again with the Death of Superman storyline that is obviously one of the best-selling Superman stories of all time, and also one of the most well-known Superman stories of all time, which is kind of interesting because the first movie they ever did was Superman Doomsday, which me and Wes did a review on a while back. I can go look that up. I know that one gets a lot of flack, and I don't think it's really deserved because I think Superman Doomsday did a lot of things really right, and I'm going to talk about that in this review as well because I kind of have to. Whenever you're doing, like, this is basically a reboot of the DC, like the very first one they made, trying to stay close to the source material and all that. But there will be some comparisons to Superman Doomsday because I did think there's some stuff that movie did better than this one. There's also some stuff this movie did better than the last one. So there's definitely going to be some comparison, like compare and contrast. But overall thoughts right now, I liked it. I thought it was good. I think it did a good job of justifying its existence. It did do something new than what we've already seen from the anime movie, so that was nice. It differentiated enough from the previous version and told a different story in a different way that made it work. I was worried at first because right off the bat, Jerry O'Connell plays Superman in this movie, and at first I was a little worried because the performance of Superman was very stilted, very wooden, not a lot of personality, and the animation looked kind of choppy too, which I was a little surprised to see. Now going into this movie, thankfully it gets better. It gets a lot better, particularly when Clark Kent comes in. Jerry O'Connell's a much better Clark Kent than he is Superman, which is kind of interesting because a lot more personality comes out, he's a lot more friendly, a lot more energetic, he's more positive. But anyway, that's my new stuff. I'm going to get to that. One big general note I want to get into before I really dive into this is I have to admit to a little bit of bias going into this film in that I've never liked this animation style, and I've had a hard time figuring out why until I was actually talking to somebody at the con about this, and they made a very good point, which is like, but around the time this animation style started, these character designs came up because this is a newest continuation of like the DC Justice League animated continuity that started with Justice League War, which is a movie I hated. But that was back when New 52 was still a thing. So it was all the costumes, all the characters, all the faces were designed very much in the New 52 style. And therefore, because New 52 is trying to be edgier, is trying to be darker, is trying to be more like grounded in reality, everyone looked mean in New 52. And that just never struck well, like, that never sat well with me. It never worked for me. It always bothered me. It kind of kept me away from a lot of the other DC movies that came after Justice League War. Granted, also because I thought Justice League War sucked. Because, like, I hated the way the characters were drawn. I didn't like the costume designs. I didn't like the characters' attitudes. It was just a lot of negativity in the initial Justice League War, and even if the stories go more positive, that mean edge just always carried through the animation. So that leads you into this movie that's clearly trying to take a different approach. It's trying to be more positive. It's trying to show Superman as a more overall positive person. who smiles, who laughs, who like tells jokes, and not like hot like quips here and there, but overall he's just an overall happier person. But the animation feels like it's at such odds with the writing at times that it's really difficult to get into it sometimes. Like, it just feels like these two different ideas are just clashing in a way that doesn't always work. Now, luckily, the stuff they do with the characters going into the story do make up for this, and they do help me kind of push past that. Fucking hell, there's a garden of rats out my window, so I apologize if you guys can hear that. So they just, but it took a while. It took a while for me to get past that. So let me get some of the negatives out of the way first before I talk about things I really like this movie, and then we'll compare it with Superman Doomsday. Because, again, I have to, because, again, Superman Doomsday was the first DC movie I saw, and it was kind of groundbreaking at the time. I know a lot of people didn't like it, but for the time it was groundbreaking. It was the first one that kind of was aiming more for adult fans, which was not heard of at the time. Like, even Justice League Unlimited was still technically a kids show. But this one is like, no, we're gonna get more. Superman Doomsday was the first one to say, nope, we're gonna get more violent. We're going to have more blood. We're gonna have more swearing words. We're gonna try to be more adult about this. Did it work all the time? No, but I thought it was a damn good first start. Now, negatives about Death of Superman Part 1. The biggest one I have to get right. I just have to rip the Band-Aid off on this one. Lex Luthor in this movie sucks, and I know I'm probably gonna get shit for that. But in this movie, Lex Luthor is played by Dwight from The Office, and he is a terrible choice. I don't know why he was chosen for this part, because here's the thing. He's an unconventional choice, and I'm not against unconventional choices. I actually really liked, I forget the actor's name, but Ben from Lost as the Joker in The Dark Knight Returns Part 2. I thought he was great. But at the same time, he worked because it was an unconventional Joker, and it played to that actor's strengths, and he made it work really well. He made it really sinister. The problem is, Dwight from The Office is an unconventional choice for a very conventional interpretation of Lex Luthor. He's still the mad scientist, still like the angry entrepreneur, still doesn't stare down Superman, still trying to manipulate all the system, but he sounds like Dwight from The Office, so he's saying stuff like, he's trying to be taken seriously, but he keeps saying stuff like, you Clyde, and for 1 second, I could have sworn he was Peridot. There was a moment there. And then the movie comes to a screeching halt at one point, just so Lex Luthor can have a monologue about why he hates Superman. And I'm like, we don't need this. This is so unnecessary. You don't need, we know. Why? It's like asking how Spider-Man became Spider-Man. Yes, we know Uncle Ben died. All right, we know Krypton exploded. We don't need to know why Lex Luthor hates Superman. We don't need to. It's fine. We accept it. Let's move on. So that's that big negative. The other negative is the first act of this movie kind of drags before Doomsday shows up, because the first act of this movie is largely focused on a scheme involving like alien technology getting in the hands of Intergang, and Superman has to work with the Justice League to kind of sort that out. But once Doomsday shows up, that's kind of thrown the back burner, so I don't know if that's probably just set up for Part 2, probably, but for here, it just seemed like padding out the runtime, and it just didn't feel necessary. It wasn't really interesting, and again, it wasn't helped by the fact that like the Lex Luthor in this movie isn't really, he sucks, and it was disappointing, so didn't really care for that. A negative I thought I was going to have before I saw the movie is I thought I was going to get really annoyed that the Justice League was actually involved at all in this. Or that I was going to be really bothered by the fact that it actually does rely on the continuity from the other DC anime movies. Which, to be fair, you can watch without having seen those movies and follow along fine. But I've always kind of preferred these movies where they're just kind of standalone. They're their own contained stories, beginning, middle, end, and it's over. I've always liked that about the original, like, when they started with this. But now they're kind of going continuity based, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, and it's just something that only bothers me. But I like them better when they're just standalone. Like, they're just on their own, they're good, one and done. Because when you do continuity, it just makes it weirder that they change the voice cast every year. But anyway, other There's one other negative I want to talk about, but it kind of goes into comparing what I thought Superman Doomsday did better than this movie, so I'm going to hold that off for now. For now, let me talk about things I do like. This movie does something really interesting with, first off, one thing I did hear about this movie is that Superman Wonder Woman romance is out of the animated universe. It's out, it's gone, it's Lois now, thank God. We can finally put the Superman Wonder Woman thing behind us completely. Thank Christ, because that was always such a bad idea. That being said, they do give it a nice little nod, like kind of a closure sentence of how basically just saying like they're training and they make a reference of like, oh well, we tried it and it didn't work out. Like, you know what? That happens. I liked how they concluded that. I thought that was a nice way to cap that off without like pissing off a lot of people that were for it, I guess. So I liked that. I thought Jerry O'Connell once... I think Rebecca Romijn plays Lois Lane. I could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. They have really good chemistry. I mean, it helps that they were married in real life, so that definitely helps. But yeah, once Clark Kent comes into play, what they do with Lois and Clark's relationship is actually really interesting in this. And it is the heart of the movie, and that was a very smart decision. And they do it in a way that I haven't seen a Superman anime movie do before, or any Superman movie do before, which I was actually found it really interesting. I'm surprised that no one's actually done this before in like an Elseworld. Is instead of having the romance surround Lois Lane and Superman, make the relationship about Lois Lane and Clark Kent first, and have Superman be the guy that just really turns her on. I actually really liked that. I thought that was a clever twist on the dynamic. I thought it was a way to keep things fresh and to kind of keep things interesting. Like I was interested in this new dynamic because then that plays into, well, at what point does Clark kind of start telling her he's Superman, and when does he let her into the superhero life, rather than the other way around, which is how we usually see it, which is when does Superman let Lois into his civilian life. So I really like the change in dynamic. I thought the way it was done just kind of made me realize, like, why haven't we seen this before? Or maybe we have. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I haven't seen it in any animated form. I haven't seen any movies. Maybe I have it in the comics. I don't know. There might be a story I haven't read that did it that way, but traditionally it's usually Lois Lane Superman first, then Clark comes in afterwards. But this way they switch it around. I thought that was a really clever idea. Really sells it, and this is where I get a little bit of spoiler territory, but it's not really that spoilery because it's called The Superman. You know what happens. Where was I going with this? Anyway, sorry, I lost train of thought. But yeah, there is a point where, again, Superman does... The majority of this first and second act, going into the third act, Superman struggles with the idea of actually telling Lois Lane whether or not he's Superman, and he feels like he's only to protect her, but then he has a talk, like, he talks to the Flash, who's getting married, and he kind of asks her, like, well, how do you tell her, how are you going to tell her you're the Flash? Like, oh, she's known for years. And stuff like that really presents an interesting dichotomy between these characters. I hope I'm using the right word. Or dynamic, there you go. These characters and interesting perspective, and his journey to finally begin opening up and telling Lois who he really is in a way that got a huge laugh, because I saw this in Ballroom 20, got a huge laugh from the audience, but I don't know if it was intentional. Is because, and again, this is going to spoilers, so if you don't want anything spoiled, stop now. Where they're at a restaurant, and then Clark says, like, I'm Superman, and Lois starts laughing. You kind of expect that, and it's like, oh, Clark, you're adorable, this is really funny, but there's no way, and then he just takes off the glasses and goes, look at me. And just the audience just lost it, just started bursting out laughing. And I don't know if that was intentional or not, because it's kind of played straight, but if it was for jokes, it's a brilliant joke. Brilliant joke, because it even has a great reaction of Lois Lane going, holy shit. It's kind of, wait, it is really funny. But I thought what was actually really smart about that is he does the reveal literally minutes before Doomsday shows up to fuck things up. And so not only is Lois Lane only now being exposed to his greatest secret, It's also around the time when he tells like, I love you, I want to be with you, you are the love of my life, that kind of thing. And he makes all these things right before he dies, and that is brilliant. That was such a smart play. And that really adds in the drama, adds in the emotion, that adds in the tragedy of what actually happens. It was a really smart play. It's like once Clark and Lois really start having their relationship in the movie, things get a lot better and things get a lot more solid. It is always kind of weird when characters tell jokes because, again, the animation style just doesn't support it. That being said, where this animation does sign really well is with Doomsday. Doomsday looks great. The action scenes between them are definitely better than Superman Doomsday, because I was definitely comparing them. And Doomsday in this movie is really fucking brutal. I think I read a review that said he was like Michael Myers, and that's a good way to describe him, because he's just a ruthless murderer. He just grabs people's heads and just like bursts them like pimples. It's kind of gross at times, and again, my original complaint I was going to have about the Justice League kind of being involved at all, and they're trying to fight Doomsday first, but as I was watching, I kind of came around, because it did a good job demonstrating just how Superman is the only one that can stop this thing. He's the only one that can stop Doomsday, the only one that can do anything at all, because everyone else just gets their ass kicked, and yeah, no one else stands a chance. He's just a killing machine, and nothing can stop him except for Superman, and he has to make the ultimate sacrifice to do it. And the way he actually does defeat Doomsday, I'm not going to give away here, is pretty damn cool. Now, that being said, this is where I have to contrast it with Superman Doomsday, and what I thought that movie did a lot better than this one did, is that in this movie, especially towards the end when the Death Superman actually happens, I felt that this movie kind of got up its own ass a little bit with, well, maybe that's being a little mean. I think it got too self-indulgent, I think, with showing people grieve and the sorrow and the pain, and people explicitly saying, I'm sad, I'm grieving, and then, here's another thing that bothered me, and the original Superman Doomsday didn't do this, and I feel like this only really started when the Zack Snyder movies came out, is the obsession with presenting Jesus allegories for Superman, which just, it didn't work in Man of Steel, it didn't work in Batman vs. Superman, it doesn't work here. I'm so fucking sick of seeing that. Because, like, early on in the movie, when Intergang is doing robbery shit, they say, like, we gotta hurry. I'm afraid of a visit from the man upstairs, which are obviously referring to Superman, but they're also hammering in that Jesus metaphor. There's this reoccurring character who's, like, this sailor who's a huge fan of Superman after he's saved him a bunch of times. And when he dies, he has this over-dramatic, like, scripture prayer thing that he says over a narration, and then he's on the dock, he's crying, it's like, why did God have to take away Superman? Like, stuff like that. When they're carrying when they have a bunch of soldiers carrying the coffin into the statue, there's a soldier, he's walking by, but a single tear goes down his cheek. It's kind of played over-dramatic. And I get it, it's a sad event, but again, I'm comparing the Superman Doomsday, and the way they did it was a lot more interesting and a lot more subtle. In that a good chunk of the second half of Superman Doomsday is just on how people react to his death, and the way every individual character reacts is different and is unique to each individual character. And not only that, but it's subtle. It was subtle, it didn't feel a need to overtly hit you over the head with it. This movie does. This movie, like, a perfect example. In Superman Doomsday, in that one, Paul Kent kicked the bucket, which I have an issue with that, but that's a whole nother video right there. But it showed Ma Kent watching it, and she sees Superman fighting Doomsday, and she doesn't say anything. There's no she just kind of covers her, like, she watches wide-eyed, like, puts her hand over her mouth, and she does cry when it turns out he actually dies, but she doesn't make any sound. It's just tears going on her face, sad look, tells you everything you need to know. Lois Lane in Superman Doomsday. Honestly, I liked her better in that movie than this one. had the perfect reaction where she sees Superman getting pounded by Doomsday, and but at the same time she also tries not to accidentally reveal like they're together, or that there's any kind of like or that she secretly knows he's doomed, but she has to maintain a professional air around other people so she doesn't accidentally give away anything huge. So like a blood spatter goes across her face, and Jimmy Olsen comments on her, but she just kind of, without looking at him or without saying anything, even she's clearly traumatized, just tells him to keep working as she wipes the blood off. Stuff like that was really interesting, and I thought was a really clever way of seeing what's going on. And even after he dies, a good chunk of the movie is just how people react to this, and like honestly, that's the most interesting part of the movie. Like that, when you have a character die like that, the most interesting thing is to show how people react to it, how people grieve, because it's such an individual process. In this movie, it's 5 minutes. It's the last 5 minutes of the movie, and then Superman, TC comes back, and like before the movie even ends, they get to that. And I was just thinking, what a wasted opportunity! What a wasted opportunity! Like, you had one job: kill Superman and have people grieve. They grieved for like 5 minutes, and then Superman's already back. So like, you just rushed through the most interesting part of the movie. I mean, you could say that for part 2, you could have like dragged it out, and you could like. That was the case where I think they completely missed the opportunity to really explore some interesting characters here, but they didn't. They just rushed through it because they want to get to part 2, and they want to do like, they tease Hank Hanshaw on this, which I liked. I thought that was a good tease. They tease Superboy, they tease Steel, they tease all the characters that are going to pop up in the next one. But the problem is, I never hear anyone that actually likes the second part of Death Superman. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I never hear it. Because that's where things kind of went a little nutso. So, like, I don't really know why you're in a rush to get to that point. But, anyway, but I think, again, just comparing the reactions to the characters in this movie to the last one are so apples and oranges, because Superman Doomsday really did spend a lot of time showing just how differential grief is. Like, Lois Lane plays like strong, like she's like the strong silent type, and she doesn't break down until she sees Ma Kent, who's like the only one who can understand what she's going through. Even like Perry White starts drinking again, but we never told he has an alcohol problem. They do it very subtly. He's just holding a glass of scotch, and Lois Lane looks at the cup and looks at him with this very judgmental look, and it tells you everything you need to know. I loved stuff like that. Even Lex Luthor's response in Superman Doomsday was very interesting, if weirdly sexual. Which also kind of added kind of interesting layers to that. Like how he makes a Superman clone just so he can beat him up. Because that's what he's just kind of wanted to do. He felt like robbed of his opportunity to prove that he's better. And he kind of takes it out in a weirdly, overtly sexual way. Like, he always has a look he's getting off on it, which is, again, weird, but it kind of works. At least, and yeah, stuff like that was really interesting. Here, you just kind of get what you expect. Everyone's like, like the loud sobs. Everyone's crying. You got that weird sailor who's making prayers to God for some reason. Lex Luthor is just bland in this. He's so bland. He's so boring. So predictable, disappointingly, and yeah, and again, I'm being a dead horse, but Superman Doomsday did it so much better, and it's the part you have to get right for the story to really work. Now, granted, I'm okay with waiting to part 2, see how it goes, see how they wrap things up. Maybe they'll expand more on the grief, but at the same time, the way this movie ends, I just don't think so. And to me, like, you just rush through the best part of the movie, and to me that's really disappointing. And even then, let's talk about Superman's actual final words in the movie, because in both this movie and Superman Doomsday, they kind of had the same scene where Superman saves Lois Lane from a helicopter, and they both have that. We know I'm, like, when Superman looks at Lois and just kind of without saying, he goes, we know that I'm not going to make it out of this. And again, I think Superman Doomsday was just more subtle and kind of more interesting. That being said, I really like Lois and Clark in this movie, so their scene was still good, and they had a nice callback to the original Richard Donner movie, which was also appreciated, which is also very nice to see. That got a good applause out of people. But at the same time, when they did Superman Doomsday, it was done very simple, it was done very subtle, it was done without anything needing to be said, with like only the bare minimum needing to be said, with just Lois Lane looking at Doomsday, looking at Superman. Superman has a look on his face like, I know it's gonna kill me, but I have to do this. All Lois says is Superman, and then he stops him and he just goes, this is why I'm here, and he goes. That's it. That tells they share one last look and he's gone. That told you everything you needed to know in like two lines of dialogue. Told you everything you need to know. This movie kind of drags it out a bit longer by saying like, you can't go in there, it's suicide and stuff like that, and you kind of lose a lot of that subtlety. And that part is disappointing. I feel like Superman Doomsday trusted its audience more to pick up on what was going on and the characters' emotions and stuff like that. And again, I do feel like it's a movie that gets unfairly ragged on just because it's not close to the source material. And it kind of did its own thing, but I liked what it did with its own thing. This one doesn't trust the audience as much, which to me is always disappointing. Now, overall, I liked this movie. I thought it was good. I think based on my grievances, I'm gonna hold off on saying great until I see part 2. But on its own, as it stands right now, I still liked it. I think it's still good. I'd still probably recommend to buy anyway. Like it's good enough to buy, I would say. So yeah, I think that's all I really have to say until the next part comes around. Then I'll probably do a review on that. Whether it's a Comic-Con or at home, because I feel like I'm invested on seeing this through all the way to the end at this point. So, yeah, that's my review of the San Diego Comic-Con premiere of Superman, The Death of Superman Part 1. So, keep an eye out for other Comic-Con footage. I have all the footage on my laptop. I just got to go through it, probably like in the next few days. As I think I've already mentioned this. Just kind of put everything together, see what I like, what I don't like, and go from there. Yeah. So thank you guys for. Oh, I did also have an unboxing video that's already edited and already ready to go. So I'm gonna put that out probably the same night I put this one up. So look for that one probably right above this one. So until then, thank you guys so much for watching. See you all later.